The next morning, I stood in the kitchen pretending to stir sugar into my tea, watching Daniel through the reflection in the window. He was in the living room, laughing on a call. His voice had a kind of arrogant ease that used to sound charming. Now it rang like a bell before judgment. I knew what I had to do. But first, I wanted one more confirmation, not because I doubted him, but because I needed him to seal his own coffin, with his own hands. I walked into the living room and sat, beside him, crossing my legs the same way I always did. Soft, submissive, the role he expected. "Hey," I said sweetly, "can we talk about the estate stuff again? I think I messed up some of the forms." He muted his call and turned to me, giving me that fake polished smile, the one that worked on bankers and women in book clubs. "Don't worry, babe, I handled it." "Handled what exactly?" He hesitated, but not long. "The trust, the transfer, the investment redirection. It's all in motion. You didn't need to stress." I tilted my head. "So, I don't need to sign anything?" "Nope," he said, grinning. "Already done." That was it. He just confessed. He didn't know it, but the phone in my robe pocket had been recording the entire conversation. Clear as glass. Time-stamped, geotagged, legally admissible. I excused myself with a kiss on his cheek. Inside, I was ice later that day. I visited Carla's office again. "I have the recording," I said, placing my phone on her desk. She listened, quietly. When it ended, she looked up with a smile that could slice marble. "This," she said, "is not just a win in court. This is the kind of thing we leak to the press when it's time." We finalized the plan. Step 1, file for an emergency. Freeze with the bank's fraud division. Step 2, deliver cease and desist letters to Daniel's new advisors. Step 3, lock him out of any remaining digital access points. Step 4, drop the press release, anonymously, of course, with the headline, "Grieving heiress robbed by husband during mother's funeral." We'd time it all on the same day, but before that, I had one more act to perform. That night was our 4th wedding anniversary. Daniel booked a high-end rooftop restaurant. He ordered champagne, oysters, steak, using my money, of course. "To us," he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine gently, hiding the fire behind my smile. "To everything we've built on fraud, on lies, on the assumption that I'd never fight back." We made small talk. I let him talk about business and politics and real estate deals he'd negotiated, all while knowing that the next morning, his accounts would be locked, his name would be flagged by financial regulators, and the inheritance he thought he had stolen, it would be publicly reclaimed, by me. As we left the restaurant, he placed his hand on the small of my back like he always did. But this time, I didn't feel anything. No love, no betrayal, just the chill of a game about to end. It started with a phone call Daniel couldn't ignore. We were having coffee on a quiet Sunday morning. He had just taken a bite of his croissant when his phone rang with a jarring, unfamiliar tone. His brows furrowed as he answered. "This is Daniel Marlowe." "Yes. I don't understand. What do you mean, flagged activity?" I sipped my tea in silence, watching his face change color, from annoyed to confused to pale. He stood up from the table, walking to the window with the phone pressed tightly to his ear. "There must be a mistake. This is my wife's account. Yes, I have access, legally. No, I haven't committed any fraud." He turned and locked eyes with me. I smiled gently, like a lamb who didn't know what a wolf was. "Isabel," he said slowly, covering the receiver. "The bank is saying someone reported unauthorized transactions. Did you say something to them?" I tilted my head. Innocent. Quiet. "Why would I do that, sweetheart?" He blinked, unsure. He was trying to read me like he always did. But I had become a language he no longer understood. By that evening, Daniel's world had begun to close in. His brokerage login failed. His offshore accounts, locked. His backup crypto wallet access, scrambled. He stormed into the study, rifling through folders. "Where's the estate binder? Where are the originals?" I leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. Why would you need those? I thought you handled everything already. He froze. I stepped forward slowly, voice calm. You stole from me while I was grieving my mother. You changed passwords, faked documents, and impersonated me to financial institutions. Isabel, I recorded everything. I dropped the flash drive onto the desk with a clack that echoed louder than any scream. His mouth opened, but no words came. Tomorrow, the banks will finish freezing your assets. My attorney will file civil charges by noon, and by the end of the week, a journalist from The Observer will publish your name. He reached out, not for me, but for control, and found nothing. But the final blow? It didn't come from me. It came from someone else, someone I didn't even expect, his sister. She showed up on my doorstep that night, mascara streaked and trembling. I didn't know he'd go this far, she said, holding out a manila folder. I kept backups. I thought, maybe one day you'd need them. Inside were emails Daniel had sent to other women, investment opportunities he'd lured them into, loans he convinced them to co-sign, even fake LLCs set up in their names. It wasn't just me. He had done this before, and now I had enough to not just bring him down, I could bury him. Monday morning felt different, not just because the air was crisp or because I had slept better than I had in weeks, but because today, the world would learn who Daniel Marlowe really was. At exactly 8:30 a.m., Carla Ruiz sent the files to 3 major news outlets: the recorded confession, the bank documents showing asset manipulation, the forged legal filings, and most damning of all, the testimonies from other women he'd defrauded over the years. I watched from my laptop as the story hit headlines. Within hours, grieving widow exposes husband's $1 million financial scam. He robbed me at my mother's funeral. Exclusive, multiple women come forward in shocking Marlowe fraud case. The comment sections exploded. He's human garbage. She's a queen for this. Justice served. Where's the movie deal? She did what every betrayed woman dreams of. Legal aftershocks. Daniel was served court papers by lunchtime. He stormed into Carla's office mid-afternoon, uninvited, furious. I was already there, sitting across from her with my back straight and my jaw set. He burst in like a storm, voice already raised. This is defamation! You ruined me! I can't access anything! Carla stood calmly. Mr. Marlowe, you are no longer entitled to the assets you fraudulently obtained, and you'll have your chance to defend yourself in court. Until then, I'd advise you to leave. He turned to me. You think you've won? You've made a circus out of our lives. I stood slowly and walked toward him, every step deliberate. You made the circus, Daniel. I just turned the lights on so everyone could see the clown. He stared at me, jaw tight, nostrils flaring. But there was no more power in those eyes. Only panic. Only loss. Going viral that evening, a short video clip from a news segment went viral on TikTok. It featured me walking out of the courthouse in a dark blazer, sunglasses on, head high. A voiceover from the reporter played beneath the shot. Isabel Marlowe didn't just survive her husband's betrayal, she turned it into one of the most high-profile asset recovery cases of the year. Within 24 hours, the clip hit 3.2 million views. People flooded my inbox, women who'd been conned, men applauding the accountability, even a documentary producer requesting a meeting. But I didn't respond. Not yet. Because the real finale, it hadn't even started. The day after the media storm, I visited my mother's grave. It had been weeks since the funeral. I hadn't been back. Not since I'd learned what Daniel did while I was weeping at this very spot. But this time, I didn't come to cry. I came to make a promise. I knelt down and placed a single white lily on her stone. The wind whispered around me, as if the earth itself knew what was coming. He tried to erase me, I whispered, but I'm the one writing the ending now. That afternoon, I had one last meeting at the bank, with the estate's trustee, a woman named Angela Shore. We sat across a polished mahogany table. Ms. Marlowe, she said carefully, you're now the sole administrator of the remaining assets. The disputed funds will return under your control pending final court approval. I nodded. But I don't want it all sitting in silence, I said. I want it working. She raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Create a foundation, in my mother's name, for women recovering from financial abuse. Give them lawyers, give them housing, give them truth. Angela blinked, not expecting that. That's bold. So was surviving him. We signed the paperwork, and just like that, Isabel Marlowe, the woman who had been manipulated, gaslit, stolen from, became the founder of something that would outlive every lie he ever told. Later that week, I agreed to just one interview, with a well-respected female journalist from The Atlantic. She asked hard questions. I gave real answers. What was the moment you knew he had betrayed you? When I realized he used my grief like a smokescreen. Do you want him in prison? I want him forgotten. The article dropped under the headline, "The Widow Who Took Back Everything and Gave More Than She Lost." It trended for 3 days, but my favorite part, the final line, "Marlowe may have stolen the money, but Isabel redefined the name." That weekend, I received a letter, handwritten, from one of the other women Daniel had conned years before. It said, "I thought no one would ever believe me, but you made the world believe. You didn't just destroy him, you gave all of us the courage to stop hiding." I folded it and placed it next to the letter I once wrote to Daniel, the one I never sent, because I no longer needed it. He was no longer my ending. I was my own beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the headlines faded, since Daniel disappeared, into a shadow of his former self. But I wasn't done. Because healing wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. And every woman who had ever been told to move on quietly. The foundation launched on a stormy Friday morning. We rented a modest office downtown, filled with soft lighting, secondhand furniture, and volunteers who knew what survival tasted like. On the glass door, the Marlowe Initiative for Financial Survivors. People asked why I kept the name. Because I took it back, I told them. It used to be his. Now it's mine. The first woman who walked through our doors was named Jasmine, mid-30s. 2 kids, empty bank account, a husband who convinced her to sign a mortgage she never saw a dime from. She sat in my office, voice trembling. "I don't know why I came. I guess because I saw what you did." I leaned in. "You came because you're done surviving. You're ready to rebuild." We helped her find a lawyer, helped her open a bank account in her name, helped her write her own damn story. A month later, I stood on a stage at a women's leadership conference. Hundreds of people in the audience. Cameras, lights. A moment I never imagined for myself. I took a breath and spoke. I was robbed, yes, betrayed, manipulated, but I was also underestimated. And that was their biggest mistake. To every woman here who's been told she's too emotional, too trusting, too ambitious, let me be clear, those aren't flaws. They're weapons. Use them. The crowd stood up, not just clapping, cheering, crying. That night, back at my apartment, I checked my messages, and there it was, an email from Daniel. Subject line, closure. "You won. I'm leaving the city, maybe the country. You were never weak. I just hated how strong you could be without me." I didn't reply. I didn't have to, because he no longer mattered. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of my modest office at the Marlowe Initiative. It was quiet, just the faint hum of an old air conditioner and the soft shuffle of volunteers settling in. I sat at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, when Kate, one of our interns, rushed in, her eyes wide. "You need to see this." She handed me her phone. The screen displayed an article from a major media outlet headlined, "Isabel Marlowe's War on Financial Abuse is Just Getting Started." The article went viral in less than an hour. My inbox exploded. Not with praise, but with stories. Hundreds of them. Women from different corners of the world, different ages, backgrounds, all echoing the same pain. I gave him everything. He left me with nothing. I trusted her with our finances. She emptied it all. My name was on the house, now I'm on the street. I scrolled for an hour, maybe more, unable to stop. They weren't just writing to me. They were reaching out to the part of themselves that still wanted to believe someone cared. And I did. That same afternoon, I received a formal invitation to speak at a national conference for women's legal rights in D.C. It wasn't just any event, it was televised, sponsored by one of the top law schools in the country, and the keynote speaker was a federal judge. I accepted. When I arrived, I felt the weight of the moment. People whispered my name as I walked past, the same name that Daniel tried to discredit, the same name I nearly changed out of shame. And now, it was printed on the welcome banner. As I stepped on stage, I paused for a second. Not from fear, from acknowledgement. I had come so far. I shared my story, but not as a victim. Not anymore. You don't need to burn everything to the ground to start over, I said. Sometimes, reclaiming what's yours is the most powerful fire of all. The room erupted in applause. But as I stepped down from the stage, someone I didn't expect was waiting for me in the hallway. Rebecca. She looked different. Shorter hair, dark circles under her eyes, a softness that hadn't been there the last time we met. She didn't speak right away. Neither did I. Finally, she said, I saw your story, and I realized I was part of the machine that crushed you. My guard went up instinctively, but she held up her hand. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm here to tell you, I wasn't immune to him either. She told me how Daniel had borrowed money from her under false pretenses, how he promised to invest in her startup, then vanished, left her in debt, alone, ashamed. I wanted to hate you, she admitted, because you reminded me of everything I let him take from me. I looked at her for a long time. She didn't need my pity. She needed to not be alone anymore. I nodded. You're not the only one he used, but you might be the first to finally say it out loud. That night I went home, sat on my balcony, and stared out into the city. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I breathed. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't running from the past. I was walking toward something. Not revenge. Not justice. Legacy. 3 months had passed since the initiative launched, and we were no longer a hidden gem. We were everywhere. News segments, podcasts, articles in major magazines with headlines like, The Marlowe Effect, How One Woman is Reshaping. Financial justice for survivors. We had opened 3 new offices, hired lawyers, financial counselors, therapists. What started with a desk and a laptop had turned into a full-blown movement, and still, every single week, we received hundreds more messages. It was working, but I didn't expect what came next. A call came in. From a well-known media executive, a woman named Jenna Ross. She ran one of the top documentary production houses in the country. She'd seen my DC speech. She'd read the articles. And now, she wanted to film a full-length documentary on my story and the women we were helping. You have no idea how many lives this could touch, she said. I paused. A documentary? About me? The old Isabel would have hesitated, would have said no, would have worried about backlash, exposure, or simply not being enough. But the woman I'd become? She said yes. Filming began a few weeks later. They followed me into courtrooms, to private counseling sessions, with consent, and into those quiet moments between meetings when I simply sat with my thoughts. The camera never flinched, even when I broke down while reading letters from women in shelters. It captured everything. And then one morning, something surreal happened. I walked into our New York office and every phone was ringing. Our inbox had crashed. Our website was temporarily down. I looked at Kate, stunned. What happened? She showed me. The trailer had just dropped. On Netflix. The clip had gone viral. Within hours, I was trending worldwide. Influencers reposted it. Women stitched clips into their own stories on TikTok. Even celebrities began speaking out about their own financial trauma. One post said, Isabel Marlowe didn't just survive, she rewrote the damn rules. I stood in the middle of our office, stunned. I had imagined healing would be quiet. I never imagined it would echo. That evening, my phone buzzed again. An email, from a name I hadn't seen in months. Daniel. All it said was, "So now you're famous. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." I stared at it for a full minute, and then I hit delete. No response, no closure, just silence, because I'd finally realized I didn't need the last word. I already had the final chapter. The premiere night arrived on a cold November evening in downtown Manhattan. Red carpet, flashing cameras, and a line of people stretching around the block. But I didn't come for the lights. I came for the women inside, and for the girl I used to be. I stepped out of the car wearing a dark velvet dress. Not flashy, just strong. The moment I entered the theater, applause broke out. Not because I was a celebrity, but because I was real. The documentary played to a silent room, not even a cough. It ended with a simple quote from my final interview. "They broke my heart. They drained my account. They erased my plans. But they forgot one thing. I was still alive." As the screen faded to black, the entire room stood. It wasn't clapping. It was a roar. I turned to see faces wet with tears, fists in the air, women holding hands, some even mouthing the words, "Thank you." After the screening, as I walked into the lobby, I saw her, Daniel's mother. She approached me slowly, dressed in quiet gray, hands trembling. "I didn't know," she whispered. "He told us you stole from him, that you were unstable." She looked away, then back at me. "I'm so sorry. I should have felt rage. I didn't." I reached out, touched her hand, and said gently, "You were lied to, but you didn't lie. That's enough." She broke down sobbing, and I knew this was healing, not just for me, but for everyone. Weeks passed. The film broke records. The foundation received grants from major institutions. I was invited to speak at international summits. But none of that compared to a moment that happened one quiet Sunday morning. I was walking in the park when a little girl, maybe 10, ran up to me with her mother trailing behind. "You're the lady who helps people, right?" she asked. I knelt down. I tried to. She pulled something from her backpack, a hand-drawn picture of me standing tall, with a red cape and the words, "The woman who didn't disappear." I smiled. "That's the best award I've ever gotten." Her mom wiped a tear. "She wanted you to have it. Said you made her feel like she could be anything." And right there, in that moment, I realized this wasn't about Daniel. It never really was. It was about becoming the version of myself he tried to prevent. And now? There was no turning back. The last shot of this chapter isn't me standing on a stage or posing for a photo. It's me, sitting at my desk, surrounded by women telling their truths. A quiet hum in the background, hope in every voice, and the unshakable knowledge that the girl they tried to destroy became the woman no one could ignore.